be talking about fairy tales. Can anyone raise their hand and give me an example of a fairy tale that maybe you've read before or heard of? Cole, you know of one?
Snow White.
Snow White, that's a good one. Some other ones might be The Ugly Duckling, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, and the one that we're going to read today is Three Little Pigs. Can I have someone who would like to read Three Little Pigs on Nook? Cole, you want to do it? Okay. Okay, I have it here. Make sure to read it loud so we all can hear you.
Once upon a time, there was the mother pig who had 3 little baby pigs. The 3 little pigs grew so big that her mother said to them, "You are too big to live here any longer. You must go to build houses yourselves. But take care that the wolf does not catch you." The 3 little pigs set off. "We will take care that wolf does not catch us," they said. Soon they met a man who was carrying some straw. "Please, will you give me some straw?" asked the first little pig. "I want to build a house for myself." "Sure," said the man, and he gave the first little pig some straw. The first little pig built himself a house out of all of it. He was very pleased with this house, he said. "Now the wolf won't catch me and eat me." The second little pig and the third little pig went along the road. So they met a man who was carrying some sticks. "Please, will you give me some sticks?" asked the second little pig. "I want to build a house for myself." "Sure," said the man, and he gave the second little pig some sticks. Then second little pig built himself a house of sticks. It was stronger than the house of straw. The second little pig was very pleased with his house. He said, "Now the wolf won't catch me and eat me." The third little pig walked along the road by himself. Soon he met a man carrying some bricks. "Please, will you give me some bricks?" asked the third little pig. "And I want to build a house for myself." "Sure," said the man, and he gave the third little pig some bricks. Then the third little pig built himself a house. It took him a long time to build it, and it was a very strong house. The third little pig was very pleased with this house. He said, "Now the wolf won't catch me and eat me." The next day the wolf came along the road. He said to the house of straw that the first little pig had built. When the first little pig saw the wolf coming, he ran inside his house and shut the door. The wolf knocked on the door and said, little pig, let me come in." "No, no," said the little pig. "By the hair of my chinny chin chin, I will not let you come in." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and blow your house in," said the wolf. So he huffed and puffed, and he huffed and puffed. The house of straw fell down, and the wolf ate up the first little pig. The next day the wolf walked further along the road. He came to a house of sticks. That second little pig had built a house. The second little pig saw the wolf coming. He ran inside the house and shut the door. The wolf knocked on the door and said, little pig, let me come in. "Then I'll huff and puff and blow your house in," said the wolf. So he huffed and puffed and huffed and puffed and huffed and puffed. The house of sticks fell down, and the wolf ate up the second little pig. The next day the wolf walked further down along the road. He came to a house of bricks that the third little pig had built. When the third little pig saw the wolf coming, he ran inside his house and shut the door. The wolf knocked on the door and said, little pig, let me come in." "No, no," said the little pig. "By the hair of my chinny chin chin, I will not let you come in." "Then I'll huff and puff and puff, and I'll blow your house in," said the wolf. So he huffed and puffed and huffed and puffed, but the house of bricks did not fall down. The wolf was very angry indeed. He said, "The little pig, I am going to eat you up. I am going to climb down your chimney and get you." The little pig was very frightened, but he said nothing. He put a big pot of water on the fire to boil. The wolf climbed into the roof and began began to come down the chimney. The little pig took the lid off the pot, and then the wolf came down the chimney. He fell into the big pot. Splash! That was the end of the wolf.
Alright, nice job. Okay, we're going to take the time. I'm going to go over some words we're going to be adding up to our word wall. And one is fairy tale. The definition of fairy tale is a story in which an improbable event leads to a happy ending. So the happy ending in this story would have been the end of the wolf, since he was trying to blow down the houses of the 3 pigs. Some other terms we're going to be using a little bit later in today's lesson is going to be protagonist. Have either of you ever heard this word before? Protagonist is the main character. So the main character in this story, we actually had 3 protagonists, and that would have been the 3 little pigs. What about antagonist? You guys heard that word before? Antagonist is a character that represents the opposition against the protagonist. So the antagonist in our story would have been the wolf, because he's kind of like the bad guy. So the antagonist is the bad guy. And we have one more word, and that is trait, which you guys have probably heard this word before. But it's a quality that makes a person or thing different from another. So like a characteristic. So those are some terms we're going to be adding up to our word wall that we're going to be using today. I'm going to be showing a video, so I can have you guys turn over this way. We're going to be using the Wii U, and we're going to be watching the 3 little pigs. But instead of hearing the story and imagining it, you'll actually get to see it. So maybe you guys kind of turn towards the TV, and I will push play. Can you guys see? You don't need to show the blinds or anything. You guys see?
Ladies and gentlemen, the 3 little pigs. Once upon a time, old Sow sent her 3 little pigs out into the world to seek their fortune. Now, be sure to write and remember, I love you. The first little pig met a man with a load of straw. I know. I'll buy you a straw and build a house. That's not a good idea. Mind your own business, thank you. And he bought the straw and set about building a house.
While we're watching, you guys can
It took him no time
want
at all.
strawberries today. If you guys can get some strawberries.
Very soon, he and a hungry wolf happened by. Pig was just about his favorite food in the world. So he knocked on the door and said, little pig, let me come. No, not by the hair of like chitty, chitty, chitty. The wolf didn't care for that at all. I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in. So the wolf huffed, and he puffed, and he blew the house in.
There goes the house of sticks.
Gobble up the little pig. Now the third little pig met a man with a load of bricks. These bricks will make a fine, sturdy house. Capital idea, my good fellow. So he bought the bricks and set about building the house. It took quite a bit of time, but it was well worth it. Nice and solid, nice and solid. But no sooner had the little pig moved in than he noticed the wolf loitering about. And the wolf, who was still hungry, said, little pig, let me come in. No, 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 not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. Well, the wolf had heard that before. Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in. Oh, don't do that. But the wolf huffed, and he puffed, and he huffed, and he puffed, until he was quite blue in the face. The house stood firm. Try another approach. Little pig, I was only teasing. By the way, I hear tell that Farmer Jones has the most scrumptious turnips. Shall we go pick a few? Oh, I'm much too busy now. What about tomorrow morning? Excellent. I'll come for you at 6. The next morning, the little pig got up at 5, hurried off to Farmer Jones's turnip field, picked up a basket full of scrumptious turnips, and dashed back home. When the wolf arrived at 6, the turnips were already boiling in the pot. Sorry, I couldn't wait. The wolf tried not to show his displeasure. No harm done. By the way, there's a lovely apple tree down in Maryland. Shall we go help ourselves to a few apples? I must cook my turnips. Let's meet there tomorrow morning. Splendid! Shall we say at 5? The next morning, the little pig was up at 4 and went off for the apples. It took longer than he expected to reach Merry Meadow, and while busy gathering apples in the highest tree, he saw the wolf approaching. You try one of these. When the wolf chased after the apple, the little pig shivered down the tree and made it safely home. The next day, the wolf came again. Really, he was quite put out. There's a fair today on Hog Hill. Would you care to go? I don't mean there. Would 3 o'clock suit you? Colossal. 3 it is. pig's house and told him how frightened he'd been by a great round thing that came down the hill. Frightened you, did I? That great round thing was a butter churn, and I was inside. This was simply too much for the wolf to stand. I've been nice long enough. I'm gonna eat you up right now. And he climbed on the roof. When the little pig saw this, he put a big iron pot in the fireplace and quickly stoked the fire. Here I come. Dinner time! You can say that again. And the little pig cooked the mean old wolf and gobbled him up.
So the third pig outsmarted the wolf. And did the ending was pretty close to the one that we read. Okay. So that story was pretty close to the one that we read that Cole read to us on the tablet. Well, I'm going to read to you this book today. I don't know if you guys may have read this one before, but it's called The True Story of the Three Little Pigs. And this is what is called a fractured fairy tale. Have you guys ever heard that before? Fractured fairy tale? A fractured fairy tale is, it takes the characters and kind of the main idea of a regular fairy tale, but instead, Cole, can you touch the screen back there sometime? Okay, sorry guys, we had to pause for a second. There was a technical difficulty. Like I was saying, I'm going to read this story to you, and we're going to discuss fractured fairy tales. So it takes the main characters of a classic fairy tale that we all know, and kind of the main idea, but it gives it a twist. And you guys will kind of figure out what I'm talking about once I read this story to you. Okay, so I'm going to read The True Story of the Three Little Pigs. It says, everybody knows the story of the three little pigs, or at least they think they do. But I will let you in on a little secret. Nobody knows the real story, because nobody has ever heard my side of the story. I'm the wolf, Alexander T. Wolf. You can call me Al. I don't know how this whole big bad wolf thing got started, but it's all wrong. Maybe it's because of our diet. Hey, it's not my fault wolves eat cute little animals like bunnies and sheep and pigs. That's just the way we are. If cheeseburgers were cute, folks would probably think you were big and bad too. But like I was saying, the whole big bad wolf thing is all wrong. The real story is about a sneeze and a cup of sugar. This is the real story. Way back in Once Upon a Time, I was making a birthday cake for my dear old granny. I had a terrible sneezing cold. I ran out of sugar. If you look down here, there's some bunny ears sticking out of his cake mix. So I walked down the street to ask my neighbor for a cup of sugar. Now, this neighbor was a pig. And he wasn't too bright either. He had built his whole house out of straw. Can you believe it? I mean, who in his right mind would build a whole house out of straw? So, of course, the minute I knocked on the door, it fell right in. I didn't want to just walk into someone else's house, so I called, little pig, are you in? No answer. I was just about to go home without the cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday cake. That's when my nose started to itch. I felt a sneeze coming on. Well, I huffed, and I snuffled, and I sneezed a great sneeze. Let's put a pig inside of his house. And you know what? That whole darn straw house fell down. And right in the middle of the pile of straw was the first little pig, dead as a doornail. He had been home the whole time. It seemed like a shame to leave a perfectly good ham dinner lying there in the straw, so I ate it up. Think of it as a big cheeseburger just lying there. I was feeling a little better, but I still didn't have my cup of sugar, so I went to the next neighbor's house. This neighbor was the first little pig's brother. He was a little smarter, but not much. He had built his house out of sticks. I rang the doorbell on the stick house. Nobody answered. I called, Mr. Pig, are you in? He yelled back, Go away, Wolf. You can't come in. I'm shaving the hairs on my chin. I had just grabbed the doorknob when I felt another sneeze coming on. I huffed, and I snuffed, and I tried to cover my mouth, but I sneezed a great sneeze. And you're not going to believe it, but this guy's house fell down just like his brother's. When the dust cleared, there was a second little pig, dead as a doornail. Wolf's honor. Now, you know food will spoil if you just leave it out in the open, so I did the only thing there was to do. I had dinner again. Think of it as a second helping. I was getting awfully full, but my cold was feeling a little better, and I still didn't have that cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday cake. So I went to the next house. This guy was the first and second little pig's brother. He must have been the brains of the family. He had built his house out of bricks. I knocked on the brick house. No answer. I called, Mr. Pig, are you in? And do you know what the rude little porker answered? Get out of here, Wolf. Don't bother me again. Talk about impolite. He probably had a whole sack full of sugar, and he wouldn't give me even one little cup. For my dear, sweet old granny's birthday cake. What a pig. I was just about to go home and maybe make a nice birthday card instead of a cake when I felt my cold coming on. I huffed, I snuffed, and I sneezed once again. Then the third little pig yelled, And your old granny can sit on a pin. Pretty grumpy. Now, I'm usually a pretty calm fellow, but when somebody talks about my granny like that, I go a little crazy. When the cops drove up, of course, I was trying to break down this pig's door, and the whole time I was huffing and puffing and sneezing and making a real scene. The rest, as they say, is history. The news reporters found out about the 2 pigs I had for dinner. They figured a sick guy going to borrow a cup of sugar didn't sound very exciting, so they jazzed up the story with all that huff and puff and blow your house down, and they made me the big bad wolf. That's it, the real story. I was framed. But maybe you could loan me a cup of sugar. So according to the wolf, that's what happens. So that's kind of what a fractured fairy tale is. It's just one example of how they took the story, but they kind of flipped it around. And this is from the wolf's point of view. And whether that's how it really happened or not, who knows? Now, based on this story, I'm going to have you guys do a summary rubric, and I'm going to pass them on to you guys. What I'm going to have you do is list some of the characteristics of each of the main characters. We have our 3 pigs and our wolf. So you guys are going to write down some traits of each character. I want you to tell me who the protagonists are, who the antagonists are in this version of the story, and kind of fill out the rest here about the summary of the story. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the timer. I'm going to give you about 12 to 15 minutes to fill this out, and then we will discuss it and I'll fill it up here on the board. Okay, so pass one over to Maggie. Now I'm also going to give you the Nook And this book, if you guys want to kind of look through the pages or reread a little bit of it to find out some characteristics. So I'm going to pass this down to you guys. And I'm going to start the timer. Now remember, this is going to be a summary over the book we just read, not the original story. So when you're talking about the characteristics, give the characteristics based on the story that we just read. And then we will discuss it. If you have any questions, you can just raise your hand. So I'm going to give you, we'll say 12 minutes for now. I went ahead and started it. And make sure to raise your hand if you need anything. Writing up here. minutes left. If we have some extra time at the end of class, I might have you guys illustrate a newspaper article that looks something kind of like this. But we'll see if we have time, and if we do, I'll give you some instructions on that. So let's finish up on our summaries, and then we'll discuss it. classic. So we read the classic story of the Three Little Pigs, and we read the fractured fairy tale version. Raise your hand if you like the classic version better than the fractured. Raise your hand if you like the fractured version better. I think I like the fractured version too. Okay. So in this story, our characters are the Three Little Pigs, number 1, 2, and 3. We don't know their names, and then the big bad wolf. He doesn't really like to be called that, but that's what the news reporters end up calling him in the story. So his real name was Alexander T. Wolf. So let's list some characteristics of each of our main characters here. Now, pig number 1, what did he end up making his house out of?
Straw.
He made his house out of straw. Pig number 2. Sticks. Yep, sticks. And the third brother, pig number 3, is maybe the smartest because he made his house out of bricks. Now, that part of the story is pretty similar to the classic story. Now, let's see here. So who would our main character, our protagonist be in this story? That was a word that we had talked about. Remember, a protagonist is the lead or main character. So who is our main character?
Pig 1, 2, and 3.
Well, in the classic story, you're right. In the classic story, pig 1, 2, and 3 are the main characters. But actually, in this book that we read, the main character is Alexander T. Wolf. So I'm going to write protagonist, which remember that means main character. Which is kind of tricky in this story just because he's the main character, but he's also kind of the bad guy still. Even though the pigs are pretty grumpy. And they're pretty rude to him. If we hadn't heard the original story and know that the big bad wolf is the bad guy, we would think that maybe the pigs are the bad guys in this story. I mean, according to the wolf, all they wanted was a cup of sugar and they weren't willing to give it to him. So we would say that maybe the antagonists in this story, kind of the bad guys, would be the 3 pigs. And what else do we know from the story? Now we know that pig number 1 and pig number 2, they don't make it in this story, do they? So this pig, is he gobbled up? This pig is gobbled up. This one kind of outsmarts the wolf. And the difference from the story that we read and the story that we had you read, Cole, was that the wolf lives, but he ends up going to jail. Because he's trying to break into the brick house, and they find out that he ate pig number 1 and 2, so that's not so great. So he ends up going to jail. He lives. Alright, so where's the setting of this story? I'm going to have you touch swipe it a little bit. There you go. Well, where's the setting? Just yeah, it's in the country, it's in a town. We don't know the name of the town or anything. So we'll write unknown town. We think maybe the country somewhere. Now, what is the problem? What's Mr. Alexander T. Wolf's problem that kind of starts the whole story? He needs sugar. So the problem is, he needs a cup of sugar because he's trying to bake his granny a cake for her birthday. So we'll put Wolf needs sugar. Needs sugar from his cake. And for our solution, well, he actually doesn't end up ever getting his problem solved because he never gets a cup of sugar. Because at the end, he's asking us for a cup of sugar. But the ending of this story is that the wolf goes to jail. So our problem here isn't solved. But Mr. Wolf goes to jail. Sorry, writing kind of crooked there. Okay. You guys did a really good job today. We read the classic story of the Three Little Pigs, and were able to watch a little video of it, which was kind of neat to see it in person. And then we were able to read the Fractured Fairy Tale version, which we all voted, and this is our favorite. Tomorrow we're going to be talking a little bit more about some fractured fairy tales. We might look into some other stories that have a new twist on them. And we'll learn a little bit more about the meaning of a fractured fairy tale.